as I go on. All right. If you have highlighters, have those ready as well. Right. That's very, very helpful in this unit. So I have to tell you that at this point, when we got to this question, we had not looked at those 4 angle pairs that we have names for, right? So it's almost like you should be able to fill this in without that knowledge. And I have to tell you this, it will differ. Like how you go about this will be different sometimes than what my key shows, and that's completely fine. But I want you to tell me where you start, okay? So I start, if I look at this big triangle here, right? I'm going to start finding that angle because I have 2 out of the 3. Okay? So I'm going to put a number 1 there. That's where I start. Right, so X, if you just go show the work here, 180 minus 60 minus 70, right? So I subtract the 2 that I have. That gives me 50 degrees, right? So that's actually the angle measure, and it's a good idea to justify by saying, hey, I used that property to come up with it. Okay. Next, Y, or I don't know, it depends on which one you want to do. Maybe you want to do Z next, right? Z is right across, what do we call these two? Vertically opposite, remember that? We're trying to wake up here, okay? 2, it's just 85. Vertically, I'm going to write this down. Vertically opposite angles, we call them congruent, right? So that's the property to use. No math necessary there. Then maybe let's do Y. That's the one I'm going to choose next. And I will use this. Maybe I will highlight the fact that Y is along a straight angle here. Okay, so you could just go 180 because the whole angle is 180 minus 85, and you end up with 95. Okay, so straight angle is equal to 180. Okay, so that's, you put the 95 in here. Good to go. And next you can do M right here. That's the last step I took in my storyline, right? That's the way I went about it. So you just go 180 minus 45, right? And that's 135. Straight angle again. So that's 135 right there. I will highlight the fact, right, that I used that straight angle right there. And have it all filled in and justified. Sometimes there's some math required. Sometimes it's just stating the answer. Right? Hopefully you were able to do this one. Let's keep going. I want to park here again a little bit just to clarify. Okay. I will tell you that if there's a transversal, guys, we always have these 4 pairs of angles, but they're not always gonna fulfill this requirement. Does that make sense? This only happens if lines are indeed parallel, right? So sometimes we can look at alternate interior. Let's look at this example down here. If you look at 118 and 80, let's say, right, 118 and 80, and consider this your transversal, they are alternate exterior, right, but they're not congruent. So are these 2 are alternate exterior, right? And then you have alternate interior here, this one and this one. They're not congruent. So don't make the assumption that this is always true. But if this is true, right, if lines are parallel, then all of these things are true. Okay? That's the key there. If lines are parallel, all of these are true. Therefore, guys, if you can show that, like if we go backwards the other way, if you can show that one of these applies, you need to only show one, then you can conclude that lines are parallel. Okay, so it goes both ways. Because it turns out that if you can show that one of these is true, all of them are going to be true. Okay, that's how it goes. And of course, if you can show that one of these is not true, then lines are not parallel. So let's keep going here. We're going to page 7. And I have to clarify here. These examples, we're proving whether or not lines are parallel. That's what this whole exercise is about. So let's go to question 2 there. You try to find a name for the angles. That's your first goal. Like if there are numbers given, do we have a name for these two? They look like alternate something, but they're actually not. Like it's not alternate interior nor exterior. Like we don't, right? If you had an angle here and here, those are alternate exterior, right? If you had this one and this one, those are called alternate interior. But right now we don't have a name. Okay, so I will make a note. Note, no name for angles present. Okay, there are no names, so do some work, right? Calculate unknown angles to find a pair with a name. See these notes, my notes, I don't have this detail. I just give you this little cloud here, right? So if you look back, it's like, well, what happened here? Right? So you choose what you want to do here. I think I'm going to watch this. I think I'm going to find this angle right here, and I'm going to call that X. Okay, so angle X is going to be 180 minus 70, correct? How come, Mr. Dirksen? Well, because there's a straight angle right there. And I know that these two need to add up to 180. So X is 110. So if you want to, you can take this 110 and write it in here. Just letting you know that that wasn't there at the beginning, but you did some work and used those properties that I talked to you about way at the beginning. Is that blurry, or am I just losing my vision here? It looks all right. So now you look at these two. They are alternate interior, correct? You agree with me, I know, right? And now you can actually make a conclusion here. Alternate interior angles are not congruent, correct? Whenever it's not, just cross off the symbol. That's basically how it goes. Alternate interior angles are not congruent. Therefore, EF is not parallel to GH. It failed. It failed the test. Okay. Do you think there could have been a different way of proving that they're not parallel? You bet. You bet, guys. Just watch, and I'm not going to do it because it's going to make it too messy. But I could have used vertically opposite angles, that property, to make this 70, right? These two are called, I don't know if you remember, but they're called consecutive interior. And they need to add up to 180. Right? 109 plus 70, that's 179. It fails that too, right? So it's up to you how you want to go about it. How about here? I'm just going to justify straight angles are equal to 180. That's my justification for that line there. That's how I found x, right? I just introduce variables anytime you want, right? Just introduce them. Just put it on the diagram. Go for it. I will tell you this, I'm not that picky how you show it, as long as you show it. Some students want to do it right here, somewhere close to the diagram. I'm fine with that. Just show me work, don't just come up with numbers randomly. So this one failed, okay? This one did not hold up. And it doesn't matter how you go about it, it's not going to work out, okay? What would this angle here be, technically? 71, right? You don't have to write this down, just watch, right? This is 71 because these are also straight. This is a straight angle right here. So you can tell that alternate exterior would not be congruent. So it would fail no matter how you approach it. We just want to find one that fails, and then everything is down the drain, okay? Let's keep going. Soon you're going to do a little bit of work in the workbooks, okay? So this example here, see, the goal is still to show if EF is parallel to GH for all of them, okay? So how would we go about it here? Let's see. Do we have, like, if we consider this a transversal, let's call this T1, and this is the second transversal given, right? You pick one transversal, but don't be jumping transversals, okay? So if you pick this transversal to work with, you need to find a pair of angles that is known to you. Zoom out, zoom in. That's what I tell my students. Zoom out if you need to. So I'm trying to see, is 75 and 40. 40 belongs to this angle up here. Do they have a name? The answer is no. There's no name for them. Okay. If there had been an angle right here, these are corresponding. But so far we have nothing. Let's zoom out. Do you see the triangle? Anybody? The big triangle? This one? You have 2 out of the 3 angles, correct? You got this one, this one. We can find this one. Let's call this Y. Okay. I'm going to find angle Y. I'm going to go 180 minus 75 minus 40. So 180 minus 75 is 105. Minus 40 is 65, right? Got 65 there. And I have to tell you that these questions, they're extremely difficult to find. So I have to make everything myself, right? All of these diagrams, most of them you see, I have to think them through, right? To make them work out or not work out, right? So Y65, sum of 180, that's what I used to come up with that. Okay, good. You want to put that in here? Sure, go for it. Some students prefer that, right? 65. And then you should see some things like, hey, wait a minute. Do we have a name? Do we have a name for these 2 angles here? Do we have a name? That would be, if you consider this your transversal, and these are the 2 lines along that transversal, right? One is, they're both inside, right? So they're alternate interior. So you can see that alternate interior angles are congruent. Okay, therefore EF is parallel to GH. And maybe I'll just do this, right? Alternate interior angles that I've highlighted there are congruent. So that's actually what we want. Therefore, we're done. Like we can now conclude that EF is parallel to GH. And you're like, Mr. Dixon, but what about this one? Like, why did you put this one on there? To make you think and to create that triangle, right? But really, you needed to find this and then see that there's a name for those two. And it meets the criteria. If it had not met the criteria, lines would not have been parallel. Okay. One more. So again, the goal is, oh wait, let's go back. I forgot something. Now we could technically go on this diagram and put arrowhead there, okay? And I will highlight that. Because we concluded this, we can now say that, okay? I'm going to put an arrow going to those markings. Right? Once you conclude that, you can put those. So if the arrowhead is there, don't prove it. It's already done deal, right? If a diagram ever gives you that, it's done. No need to prove it. And you might think, where am I ever going to use this in real life? It's a good question. Actually, in construction, use this a lot. When you make a staircase and the rails, right, on the side, you know how they have to have the railings, right, so you don't fall through or out, right? So these two runners are parallel, right? So technically, if you measure this angle and this angle, right, if they're the same, then these two are parallel perfectly. And you should be able to repeat that over and over, right? Alternate interior, right? But if you're like a rebel carpenter, you're like, no, I don't want to show it that way. I want to make sure that this angle and this angle, they add up to 180. That will also make sure that this railing is parallel to that railing. Right? So there are many applications, trust me, in the trades. Okay, if you do plumbing, you'll also be doing a lot of that. Question 4. The goal is to show EF is parallel to GH. This is transversal 1, transversal 2. You choose the transversal you'd like to use. Sometimes one is better than the other. I will say this though here. Looking along transversal 1, right? The angles given have a name. This is just a cloud here. This is what I'm thinking. Okay, as you're looking at it, it's like that's what I'm thinking out loud, right? So highlight them. Those are consecutive interior, right? Let's do a test here. 83 degrees plus 97. That would be 180. So you just do a little test here because that's what you ultimately want. Consecutive interior angles. Mr. Dixon, could I have used CIAs? Yeah, you could. Consecutive interior angles are equal to 180. Therefore, EF is parallel to FH. See, that's all it is, guys. Like sometimes you need to do a little bit of math, come across it, use sum of triangle, use vertically opposite angles, use those properties to help you find angles that will help you make that final conclusion. But right now, 77 and 103, don't use that. There's no name for that, right? If you go along T2 here, you can't. But you could find, for example, that this is 103. Let's do that. You just need to use a pen for that, right? This is 103 here. And these two add up to 180. So regardless of which transversal you use, you should come up with the same conclusion. Because once lines are parallel, they're parallel. It doesn't matter how you cut them and slice them. It's not gonna change. Okay, so now I can go ahead confidently and say lines are parallel. And I will later on show you on the iPad. Have you ever used GeoGebra, your teachers? GeoGebra? No? Okay. I will show you, like, you can actually just drag this any which way or put some more transversals in there. Once lines are parallel, they stay parallel. Okay. I would have liked to have had these pages inserted right here, but these are in the workbook. So I will make a note here. If you could write this down. Write this down at the bottom of this page. Calculate missing angles given parallel lines. And that'll be in the workbook. It's very important that you make that note because otherwise you won't find it, right? Is it textbook? What is it? So 4 to 5, those are what I call easy ones. And then page 3, we'll solve for x and then use properties plus algebra to solve for angle. So I'm going to pause here for a bit and give you a chance to practice this in class before we move on. And so tomorrow you can expect an AC on everything we've done up until now. It could be that you get a report this afternoon at some point already. So just check your school email. I'll send a message out on Google Classroom when I send. Okay, so grab your workbooks. Make sure you have them with you all the time, okay? Both booklets. And we're going to first go pages 4 to 5. We're going to do easy ones first. And then we're going to go page 3 after, okay? When you study, make sure you check out these pages that I'm referring you to, okay? So that you have examples on those. Can I move pages? Yeah? Okay. So go to page 4 here, and I'll just guide you through a couple here. Wake up a little bit, right? Okay, so find the measures of each indicated angle, but I will add in brackets, I want you to learn to justify. And justify or explain, which is what I've been doing with you up until now. So the first one here, I'll make a note that I'm trying to use the same color, but I don't know if they're telling you lines are parallel. Okay. How about I just grab the highlighter and just tell you, hey, you notice that every single example has parallel lines. So you're not showing whether or not lines are parallel. That's not the point here. The point is, given that lines are parallel, all of these are true. Okay. So do we have a name for these? This 116 here, and that would be alternate for sure, and they're both outside, so alternate exterior. So I don't like the variable they have, but let's just go with it. Question mark is equal to 116 degrees. And all you say is that alternate exterior angles are congruent. That's all you need to do there. That's the justification as to how you came up with it. Okay. So this is very easy, but it's good practice. Over here to the right, question mark. So you basically look at it, it's like, what are these two angles called again? Alternate interior. What is true about them? That they are congruent, right? So you can just go ahead and call it 100 degrees. And your justification would be alternate interior angles are congruent. Let's do one that isn't congruent. That's always the one that students forget about, which is, let's go to 6 and then the rest you'll do, okay? 6, these are actually consecutive interior. If you want to call it X instead of question mark, that's okay. Okay, question mark is going to be 180 minus 101. So question mark is 79. And why? How did you come up with that? Consecutive interior angles equal 180. So that consecutive interior angles is the only example you have to subtract from 180 to get that. There's one angle pair that I didn't cover, but I think you might see it in the homework or AC ever. The textbook calls these two here adjacent interior. Adjacent interior. If that comes to that point, I will help you. I'll remind you of that. But if you ever come across that, adjacent means touching. So adjacent interior, like these two would be adjacent interior, so would these two be. Okay. So how about you practice the rest? So 1 to 10, I'm just going to give you 1 to 10 is just fact is that they are parallel. You just have to use the property to find the missing angle. But then you get to 11, right? Find the measure that makes lines U and V parallel, right? So you would have to find what would that question mark be, have to be, so that this line ends up being parallel to that line. So you still end up doing the same thing, but they're not guaranteeing you they're parallel. You have to figure out what needs to be that missing angle to make the lines parallel. So pages 4 and 5 for a bit, you work through it, and I will then review it. Let me help you with this one. If you want U and V to be parallel, in this case, you want them to add up to 180. So it's almost like you're still doing the same thing, right? That'd be 117, right? So question mark would have to be, right? This would have to be 117 because that would make these 180, right? So you're still doing the same thing, but now it's like, what should it be so that they're parallel? They're just twisting it a little bit. Had it been 116, not parallel. 118, not parallel, right? So you're still doing the same thing. Just to have one or two more past this, let's go over to page 5 here with me. And it's just adding intensity to it, right? There's many lines, but we want to know if this one is parallel to that one, right? UV. And so basically just figure out these two are consecutive interiors, so they must add up to and that's 46 degrees, right? So this must be 46, so that combined this gives you 180, and in that sense you make them parallel. I will say this, it's good idea to just call it, right, consecutive interior angles are equal to 180. That's the property that you wanted to fulfill, okay? And then this one here, what do we call these two angles? Right, they're both on the same side of this transversal, and they must be equal because they're corresponding, right? Corresponding angles are always congruent. Okay, so corresponding angles are congruent. That's why you made that 89 there. Question here. Let's go to 15 here. I like this one. What do we call these two angles? What's that? Apparently not, but if I did this, I wish I had an eraser. If I got rid of that line, what would you call that? Those two. Corresponding would be one inside, one outside, right? But they're now both inside, right? Those we call consecutive interior. So you almost ignore this one. Ignore any line that shows up along the way. Like if they're saying, hey, this one and this one, this is your transversal. That's transversal 1, by the way. This one would be transversal 2. Okay, you're like, but one is shorter than the other. It's still a transversal, right? This line is intersecting many, but these would be consecutive interior. I don't want to make it too messy here, so I'm going to do this. Consecutive interior angles. I don't want to make it too messy, but I did make it messy, right? Are you with me on that one? Not so sure, right? But watch this. How about this here? If you had two lines that seem to be parallel, correct? And you had a transversal. Follow me here. If I said, hey, these two are called consecutive interior, right? What if I now say, hey, are they still consecutive interior if I were to do this? The answer is yes. If you are considering, hey, is this line parallel to that line? You ignore anything in between because you're now just focusing on that one and this one, right? So you kind of ignore anything in between. So almost think of it, the story, what happened to the story. Maybe somebody came and added a whole bunch of lines in between those two consecutive interior, but right, you're just worried about this line and that line, right? So if you're considering those two, it doesn't matter what's in between, it's those two lines you're considering. Is that, I hope that starting to sink in. Let it sink in, guys. You know, some students just think, I just don't get this, right? Put another word to that, yet. I don't quite get it yet. But Mr. Dirksen, I promise you I'm going to give it my best, and I'm going to try it. I'm going to sit down, and I might come into some hiccups, but I will get better at it, right? It's just like learning an instrument, right? At first it's frustrating. Sport, anything, you just keep going at it. You haven't seen a whole lot of this. That's the problem, okay? Next. Which one do you want to do? I think I'm going to do this one here. This angle right here and this angle right there. What do we call those two? Corresponding, right? We're considering U and V, and they're both on the same side of the transversal. One is inside and one is outside. So these are corresponding. So question mark has to be 73. And that's corresponding. Corresponding angles must be congruent if you want parallel lines. Okay? And it's along this transversal I'm considering here. There's no angle given here, so I'm just ignoring that one. Fun stuff, eh? I know. You can't wait for this to be over. I get it. But keep trying, okay? I'm looking at 17. 17 right there. I'm considering this transversal here. That's the one I'm going to focus on, and along that transversal there's a bunch of angles. The two lines that I'm trying to figure out whether or not they're parallel are these two. Okay? The two angles that I'm going to consider that I'm pretty sure I have a name for would be these two. What are they called? They're both outside, right? So exterior is going to be part of the name. They're on opposite sides of the transversal. Alternate exterior, right? And according to our rules, they must be the same if you want these lines to be parallel. So question mark is 80 degrees because alternate exterior angles must be congruent for that to happen. Okay, let's do one more. 19. 19. I'm going to consider this transversal here. That's going to be the one I'm going to consider. And again, the lines I'm trying to see if they're parallel would be this one and this one. That's the highlight, right? So anything in between, guys, forget about it. Forget about it. So what would we call these two angles here? This one, ignore, right? And this one. If you look at the green lines, both are inside. So interior, and they're on opposite sides of the transversal. These are alternate interior. And I want them to be the same. Because alternate interior angles must be congruent if you want U and V to be parallel. So it's almost like you're a worker and you're doing some carpentry work. It's like, you know what, I want UV to be perfectly parallel to, I want U to be parallel to V. I will measure this angle and that angle, and it has to be the same, right? It has to be the same. You're like, what about that line in between here? Ignore, right? Ignore. Can we say that this line is parallel to either one of them? We can't say for sure because we don't know the angles. We don't. It looks like it, but we don't know. But right now, that's not even a question, right? So just leave it. I'm just going to tell you this. The other ones, the key is going to be posted. I'm actually having pages 2, 3, 4, 5 all in one. That's one key. But I wanted to do this first, and then I'm going to go now to the other one. So follow me, please, to page 3. Practice, 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 guys, until you wrap your head around these. So go to page 3. Grab a highlighter. This question, like if we just focus on one, it's telling you, first of all, just solve for x, right? But it's telling you something way more important than that. It's telling you that those two lines are parallel. And so this is the transversal we're considering. I wish there would have been more space for this, but so you're just going to have to be, don't write as big as me, okay? Looking at this, you are given two angles. Do we have a name for this angle and this angle? alternate exterior. Right? I'm going to make you say it in unison by tomorrow. Right? Everybody at the same time. Yes, alternate here. What do we know about? We know that alternate interior angles, are they congruent? Why do we know they're congruent? Because of this. Because of this, we can confidently say, in this case, they are congruent. That means, watch this, that means that 21x plus 6, is he seriously introducing algebra to this unit? You bet. This angle here has to be exactly equal to this angle here, right? And what does this angle measure? The box means 90, right? 90 degrees. Bingo. So now you just do some simple algebra and you find your answer. The 6 comes over subtracting, right? So 21x is equal to 90 minus 6. I didn't talk about that yet, have I? Okay. Some of your teachers may have told you subtract 6 from both sides, right? That's okay. Keep doing that. But it ends up being the same, right? Like when a term crosses the equal sign, the sign switches, okay? So that's 21x, and that's 84. Okay, and now what do we have to do? Divide by 21, right? Divide because 21 is multiplying x. We divide both sides by 21. X is, I think that's a 4. Bingo. That's all you need to do for the first couple. Just find x. Just find x. How do you know if you did things right? You can check. We can check here. We can go 21 times 4. So I'm basically taking this expression, introducing 4 to it, and adding 6. That is 84 plus 6, which is 90 degrees. And that's exactly what I'm supposed to be getting, right? So guys, we're doing the same thing. We're still applying the same properties. We're naming angles. We're using the property. Hey, they're supposed to be the same. Well, then whatever is here is going to be equal to whatever is up here. And then you just do some basic arithmetic or algebra to solve for x. Are all of them going to be congruent, guys? Are you going to have an equal sign every time? Yes, there's going to be equal sign every time, but come with me. When you go to 25, when you go to question 25, is this angle equal to that angle? Consecutive interior angles add up to 180. So let's do this one and then I'll let you go a little bit, okay? I will highlight the fact that the lines are parallel. So there's a lot of information given to you here. Now that you took this course, you know that these two, let's just label them, they're consecutive interior. And I just used up all my space there. Anyways, I think I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it work on the left side here. They add up to 180. That I know. So, you ready for this? X plus 96. That's one angle. Plus x plus 96. That will equal to 180 degrees. By the way, your answers are always going to be in degrees when you do these. So, you actually can get rid of the brackets because there's no negative in front of them, right? But those two x's will turn into 2x. and 96 and 96 is 192, and that's equal to 180. And you know what? I'm going to go with what some of your teachers may have done. Minus 192, minus 192. That leaves you with 2x minus 12, right? It's a negative because it's 180 minus 192. And then you divide by 2. And so x is equal to negative divided by positive is negative. Negative 6. And but you're not quite done here. I'm going to circle it. But you're not quite done here in this one. What is it asking you to find? Find the measure of the angle indicated in bold. Okay. So let me just check something here. Yeah, we're good. I'm going to tell you that this is going to be crowded, guys. So we found x. Now we're going to find, do you see the one that's a little bit darker than the other one? So they want you to find this in bold here. So we plug that in. Negative 6 plus 96 is equal to 90 degrees. And so that's the one you found right there. Do you notice that this one will be 90 as well, this one? So, but they only want you to find the one that's a little bit darker. You see, it's hard to see, I know. I did a bad job at copying and pasting there. But, so that's how you treat the ones where you have a missing variable. Same thing, really, except for there's a little bit more algebra involved. So before you leave today, I will actually assign you the homework for, I don't know why, I think I'm going to write it down on this piece of paper here at the top of it. So I'll just tell you this, homework, page 2 to 5 in the workbook. So basically, I will post the entire key to the whole thing. And some of you already did on pages 4. Some of you did. I did a lot of it in 4 and 5. So really just focus on maybe doing some more of these. And page 2 is basically just reviewing what you've been doing earlier today. Okay. And I'll tell you what's happening tomorrow because I want you to just be ready mentally. So if you look at the notes, if I can find my notes. Wait. Where's my blank copy? Oh, right here. No, is that? What did I do with my notes, guys? 1 second.